Today we're on to part 2. I've got my hubs wire wheeled, got the old gaskets off, got the old paint off of the face there. So now we're ready to clean the hubs really good and get ready to reinstall them back on the truck. What I like to do is wipe them out real good with blue towels, and then brake parts cleaner to the inside, and then wipe them down again, and then we'll put the bearings in. So these are the bolts that hold the rotor to the hub. You can see the remnants of the old Loctite there. So I take them to the wire wheel and get all that off, and then apply a new coat of Loctite to the threads before I put the rotor on. So on this particular truck, the front rotors and rear rotors actually end up being the same. So we got them all the bolts cleaned up, put some Loctite on them, and they're installed. The seals are all in, we're ready to go together. On the other side, somebody mentioned that the calipers were different. This truck, all the calipers are the same on this truck. Every International with hydraulic brakes and the 4700 series that I've come in contact with had the same calipers on all four corners. I've never had anything any different. Got our brake hoses, got our fuel filter, air filter, secondary fuel filter, oil filter, transmission filters, all that stuff is here. So we are ready to start assembling. I'm going to start on the rear because that's the hardest part to get to, and I like to do the hardest first. Alright, so I got all this together. I got the back jam nut in, the locking washer, second jam nut torqued to spec, and then 2 tabs bent over. I've got the face cleaned and the axles cleaned, and this is the metal shim gasket that's supposed to be for it, but that's not going to work. Alright, so I got the new replacement gasket on here. A lot of guys like to use just RTV. I prefer to get a new gasket every time. I don't have any troubles with them leaking. I haven't ever. I just clean up the back of this real good and put the two together. This is the brake hose that goes from the caliper to the steel line. Before I put it on, I like to put some Never Sees under the nut. So if he ever has to take that caliper off again, at least this will come loose, and maybe he won't have to replace this. So this is that real short piece of brake line you guys saw me make and put on there, but I'm just not happy with it. So I took it back off and just made this. I'm just going to put one straight 90 in it and try and make it much cleaner look. Alright, so we got the brake hose in, and this is that piece of brake line. And I know it seems trivial, but I'm much happier with that. Alright, this is the passenger side all done. Back together, axles in, and the driver's side is done. The hoses are on, all the lines are hooked up and all that kind of stuff. Now the only thing left to do back here is I need to flush the rear end, refill it, and change the shocks. There's a slight problem with the shocks. It's quite comical. I'll insert some pictures right here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But while we're waiting on shocks, we're going to go ahead and move to the front. And we'll just rinse and repeat up here. We're just going to go ahead and get all the front brakes taken care of now. Back brakes are all finished up and bled. Front brakes are all done, assembled, bled, new hoses on, all that stuff, and Never Sees on all the wheel studs. So all the brakes are finished. We're topped off. I've hosed them all down with brake parts cleaner. We've looked for leaks. Now I'm topping off the oil for the bearings. I just leave it open. It's pretty warm today, so I'll let it settle. I'll move it back and forth a little bit, let it settle, come back and check the level of it. But next we're gonna move on to the shocks. Well, we got us a couple matching shocks now, so we'll go ahead and get these changed out. I'm trying to get everything done on the back first if I can, because it's so tight back here, there's not a lot of room to work. After that, it'll be a much more enjoyable project. Well, as you can see, one was pretty rusty. This is the bottom one. It's got a bunch of rust buildup on it. So we're going to take it to the wire wheel, get it all cleaned up. And I always use Never Sees in here, so the next guy that goes to change the shock doesn't have to fight it like I had to fight that one to get it loose. So this is the shock we're taking off. And it's been replaced. I'm assuming it's an oil-filled shock. You can see how quickly it just collapses on its own weight. So it's probably an oil-filled. or it's no good, one or the other. But we're replacing it with a gas filled, so that it should give Justin a much better ride, especially when he's towing. Alright, so here's evidence of never sees on the shock bolt. Wouldn't come out, so the bushing came out with it. Had to use that hammer to get it out. Now I'll cut the bushing off and then get down here to where the sleeve is split, if I can find it. If it is split, if not, I'll just have to use a cutting wheel, cut it, and then hit it with the air chisel and break it and clean the bolt up if it's able to be cleaned up enough. We'll see. All right, you can see what I did. I just took a cutting wheel, just get down there where we almost go through, and then hit it with a chisel, and then it comes loose. You can see it. Just a little mark on the bolt there, but you know, she's fine. So now we'll clean it up, get all the rust off of it, put some never sees on, get ready to go back together. Now we're going to drain this rear axle out and let it drain a while I'm doing some other work, and then we're going to refill it with some fresh oil. And I'm going to take the drain plug and clean it up real good, and then put some Teflon tape on it. Whenever I'm doing anything with the rear axle, I always come up to the vent and check it to make sure it's not plugged. Look how much crud is baked around the vent. So we want to make sure we clean all that out, because as the axle moves inside here, it will create pressure, and the pressure has to have a way to release. So if this isn't here, what will happen is it'll blow out the axle seals or the pinion seal. So we want to make sure that this is good and clean and nothing obstructing the airflow. So let's get that cleaned up. Alright, so it's all cleaned up around there now, and here's what I took out. All of this was packed around there, and it smells like gear oil. So more than likely this thing has been overfilled at one time, and the gear oil kind of spilled out and then hardened. So it's also important that you look close to this. I take a mirror and look all the way around it, make sure there's no holes in that vent from rust, because if there is, all the water gets collected there and can go right down inside the differential. Luckily this one's okay, and we didn't get any water out of the differential, so in pretty good shape, ready to go back together, I guess. Alright, so I got this cleaned up enough to get a ratchet in. And now get the plug out. I got a fresh bucket of gear oil over here. Put my drain pan. I need that in case we spill. Okay. Smile, lady. Alright, now we'll fill this up until it starts coming out of here. Once it does, then we're good. Alright, so once it starts dripping out, we stop. Okay? And then we just take a walk away for a half hour or so and wait for the gear oil to settle through the hubs, because after it makes its way into the bearings out here in the hubs, sometimes it'll take up to 2 or 3 quarts more. So we want to wait and let it work its way through there. And we're back. And it's full. So we can just go ahead and put the plug back in now. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it another pump or two, just to be sure. Go ahead, lady. Give it a pump.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, stop. It's full. It's just coming out. Alright. Better safe than sorry, as you like to say.
I do?
Yeah. Yeah, you just don't know it yet. Alright. I'll get this tightened up, get it all cleaned up, and then we're done under here. So this pin goes through here. This is the cable end, and it's frozen. It won't come out, so we're just taking this whole thing apart. Took the jam nut loose there, and now we'll just take this over on the workbench and work on it instead. I have cleaned up the pins on.
And threw them on the floor.
Cleaned up the pins in the wire wheel. One. Yeah, there we go. But now I want to clean up the inside edges, right, like with a file, like I did this one, so that when I put the piece in there, they'll move, and then we'll use never sees on them as well. You can see how it's all rusty in there. All we want to do is take the rust out. By getting the rust off this, then the pin fits right. Okay, we're ready to go back together. So I was looking at that air brake chamber underneath. When I originally talked to Justin about this truck, I said it's hydraulic brakes with an air operated parking brake. I said, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that. And now I know why. This cable was, the original parking brake was changed out. This cable was added by the upfit company that built the ambulance. I called that company. They no longer exist. It's another company that bought them or owns them, whatever the case. And this cable's no longer available. So this is what would have originally been on it with a manual parking brake lever. So I called Alan at AMI and he did some digging, found out what it was supposed to be. He's got the parts on order, so as soon as we get those, we'll start putting this all back together and then keep moving forward. So I'm going to leave you right there on this project because we're going to be waiting on parts for a day or two, and when we get back, we will get on the parking brake and all of the filters, and then next would be the hitch. So hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, leave your comments down below, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.